Hello and welcome to MySecurity TV, our Tech and Sec Weekly. This is our Friday morning edition. My name is Chris Cubbage. I'm the Executive Editor and Director with MySecurity Media. Today we're looking at a Bosch 8000 series. It's a new version of its X series just released. We're going to be joined by Allen Hepburn, Video Systems Product Manager with Bosch. And then we're going to dive into cybersecurity and Virsec, making a move into the Australian and New Zealand market. And they are expanding their sort of market reach out for their application-aware workload protection offering. We're going to be joined by Rob Nobilo, who's their regional sales director, and they're building their new team with Virsec here in the ANZ. So we'll look forward to speaking to Rob. If you happen to be listening, welcome to Say Good Day. Let us know that our streams are working and let us know where you're listening from. You can otherwise join in the chat and there's some range of questions. So Allen will also have some presentation slides on the Bosch video camera as well. Otherwise, we cover off on aerospace and space, defence and national security, cybersecurity and critical technology, and cities and infrastructure. We should be streaming on YouTube, LinkedIn and Facebook. Our main Facebook page is the Asia Pacific Security Magazine. And otherwise, we'll go for at least 45 to 50 minutes on this particular session. And we'll probably release Rob's version of the interview with the Cybersecurity Weekly podcast as well. Just a follow up from last Friday, we were joined by the Australian Strategic Policy Institute looking at tank technology and the military spend. I think it was $2.5 billion investment into Australia's new tanks, but the call on that is that they're a bit of an overkill and overweight. So worth having a look if you're into military and defence. And then we also went back to cybersecurity and were joined by Phil Rodriguez, who's the head of security APJ commercial for Amazon Web Services as well, looking at the federal government's announcement of $8 million investment in cybersecurity professionals. Quite the contrast when you think about defence spend and cybersecurity spend. That interview with Phil has also been released as a podcast on the Cybersecurity Weekly podcast. And there's also an interview there from Jane Lowe, our Singapore correspondent with AEST, and the head of R&D in Montreal, and their law enforcement case studies as well. There's a couple of good ones. And as always, Jane does great podcasts. Final call for the Cyber Risk Leaders magazine and the Australian Cybersecurity magazine coming out in a few weeks. If you want to get an article in, welcome to send it through, but you better be quick, so we're running out of time. And also thank you to our sponsors, IT Glue, and there's a range of MSP webinars, and I've got some news around this. This is obviously a Kaseya company, and we're lining up an interview with the CEO of Kaseya following their cybersecurity breach, and we'll get some more news. But that should be on Monday, and hopefully it'll be out by the close of business on Monday here in Sydney as well. Also, thank you to RSA and the Secure ID Suite, and I've got an interview coming out with them very shortly as well. But otherwise, if you want to support the channel, welcome to go to the MySecTV shop and check out our Cyber War series. So without further ado, that's us from the marketplace. Let's bring on Allen Hepburn, Video Systems Product Manager. And Allen, are you there? There you are. Beautiful. I thought I lost you there for a second.
No worries.
Allen, thanks for joining us. And this follows a release, I think it was just the other day, on the new Flexidome IP Starlight 8000i X series. Maybe talk us into what the difference is between the 8000 and the X series in terms of the normal series that you have going.
Thank you. Good day, Chris, and good morning to all the viewers. As Chris mentioned, my name is Allen Hepburn, and I'm the Video Product Manager for Australia and New Zealand. I'm excited to be here today and grateful for the opportunity to talk about this exciting new addition to the Bosch video range. So it's called the Flexidome IP Starlight 8000i X series, which is a mouthful. So for the purposes of this session, I will just refer to it as the X series. So it is based on the current version of 8000i, but it has a few additional new hardware in terms of new optics, bigger image sensor, and some improvements on the algorithm, which I'll get to in some of the slides.
But definitely, welcome to here we go. You got your slides ready to go, and we'll walk through those. And again, if you've got any questions, or you want something particularly covered, welcome to fire something into the chat. And then otherwise, I'll come up with some questions along the way, Alan. Are these currently available in the region in Australia already?
It's been released and customers are able to order it from our distribution partners.
Great. All right, mate. Well, let's walk us through, because I just mentioned I just finished a project over in WA with the 5000 series in.
Yes.
How long has the 8000 series been out?
So the predecessor, or the standard model of 8000 was released back in 2019, just before the last ASIL, and that actually won the last award of ASIL for best camera. So the X series is just an addition to that model, so already a strong platform, but with further enhancements and improvements. So at a first glance, it's not just an aesthetically pleasing design. It also houses intelligence, strong analytics, and with the new X series, outstanding image quality with the introduction of Starlight X and HDRX technology. And all of this comes in a robust and secure housing.
Yeah, walk us through, yeah.
Okay, so let's just start off with the Starlight X technology. So if I can draw your attention to the image comparisons towards the right of the screen, you will immediately notice a difference. So this is quite a challenging scene. Early evening, lots of moving vehicles and headlights. And as you can see, the X series copes really well with it. You can clearly see better sensitivity, better reproduction on the color, which also allows more detail. So then a second comparison just below that, in almost complete darkness. And this time it is the 4 megapixel model being compared to a competitor's product with the same image size sensor and same resolution. So with this scene, you can almost think that they use some form of infrared or IR, but that's all achieved just by using natural light. In addition to that, also some clever optics and improved algorithms. So if you were to use analytics in this scene, then you'll at least be able to get all the relevant information as all the objects are visible.
Where is it occurring in the camera? So the difference there is quite stark in terms of that, even the HD Starlight and the Starlight X. Is it? Yeah, what is happening? Is it an optical
yes.
Firmware? Is it a firmware or is it a piece of hardware in there?
So the next slide actually covers that. So
okay.
Good timing on that question. Okay, so let's just take a closer look at how we achieve this significant improvement. So this is done through hardware and through firmware improvements. So firstly, a bigger large pixel half-inch sensor. Then new optics, which comprises of 8 elements in the lens, which allows up to 54% more light. And last but not least, the improved software side on the suppression and image processing.
On the camera, that processing is happening on the camera?
Correct. So it's all at the edge. So this results in 5.5 times improved color sensitivity, also reduced motion blur, and also less artifacts, as we are able to increase the shutter speed. And as you've seen in the comparison images, more detail due to less noise and much better color reproduction. Then on the monochrome side, you have even better sensitivity up to the point where you almost don't need to rely on IR illuminators.
Does it still come with IR?
No. So it's just a Starlight model. Starlight X in this case, yeah. Okay, so let's just look at a few other examples, this time just in monochrome, where we've again compared the X series versus the standard or the current HD model, and also 2 other tier 1 competitors. So first of all, you'll notice the excellent image being produced by the X series, and also you're able to see the objects at least in the scene. Towards the right, you have the standard HD model, which is already a high-spec camera, but compared to the X series, you have a lot less detail. Then moving on to the competitors' cameras, just below that, you've got very good sensitivity in competitor B, and the stationary objects are visible, but unfortunately the moving object has notable motion blur, and likewise with the competitor A, with just less sensitivity.
That's pretty. What would you know? What lux level that is? That looks almost 0 or less than
yes,
1.
Less, yes, definitely less than 0. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so the next exciting technology is called the HDRX. So we first covered Starlight X, and now we're moving on to HDRX. So this is effectively the next generation of HDR technology. So taking the same principles which were applied in the Starlight X and HDRX to provide sharper images with more detail and less motion blur. So again, if I can draw your attention to the image comparisons, you may think for a brief moment that if you look at the HDRX image, that it's actually a stationary vehicle, as it's that sharp, and you can also read the number plate. But in fact, if you look at the other comparisons, you'll realize that the vehicle is in fact moving, and you will then see noticeable artifacts and motion blur.
Maybe, so, Alan, maybe just for the audience, most of them, I'm sure, will have an understanding of what HDR is, or high dynamic range. Maybe just go into explain what high dynamic range is for us.
Okay, the next slide covers that.
That's always the problem with slides, isn't it?
No worries.
Well, you tell us what HDR is on the next slide then. But that's pretty good. Any idea what speed that car's going at?
It was around 60 kilometers an hour.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
I do know that Transport I think they do like the Bosch cameras on their transport network. Yes, you see quite a few of them around, yeah?
Correct. That's one of our biggest customers in the transport industry. So with the HDRX, you have various modes which you can set. And in this case, the motion optimized mode was used. And that is, again, to have clearer, sharper images for a moving object. Okay, so how does the HDRX technology work? So here we can firstly see how traditional HDR is applied, where the final image is made up out of multiple images. So one at a long exposure time to allow more light in, and then a short exposure, which produces a darker image. Now, to this date, it's been fairly effective, but as a result of the long exposure, you tend to get more HDR blur and artifacts. So in comparison with the HDRX, we apply a similar principle, but by combining the two images, and because of the new hardware and improved algorithms, we're able to take a high and a low readout at the same short exposure. And that result is that moving objects are sharper and have less artifacts.
Yep. Just balances that light out as well, doesn't it?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so then moving on to the edge analytics. So each Bosch camera is able to overlay a metadata stream on the video stream, which simply put gives you additional information of the scene. So such as an object, you can also define its trajectory, its position, speed, color, etc. So in addition, you also have 16 analytic rules on each camera that are preloaded. It's not licensed, so it comes with the camera as a standard. And on the higher end models, such as the X series, you can run all 16 rules at the same time. So a typical example of such a rule is a vehicle crossing a line. Now, because you can classify the object as a vehicle, you can apply a filter that only detects vehicles traveling in a certain direction, which will then raise an alarm just by applying those two filters. And with a few basic steps on that rule, you've just applied a wrong direction rule to detect vehicles traveling in the wrong direction.
I suppose
you can then also,
Alan, just on this, and this becomes where the configuration comes into play as you make the system, create intelligence, basically, in terms of the video surveillance. How easy is it to push sort of rules and policy out to multiple cameras at the same time? Do you have to do this at the camera level, or can you do this at the platform level and then do multiple cameras on this? Where's the how easy is it to apply these rules, as you say, for each camera?
So what you can do is you can configure the first camera and do the necessary calibration. And once that is done, you can then copy the config and do like a batch config in multiple cases. So
right,
that
okay.
is possible. Yeah.
That was the answer I was after. Thank you.
No worries. So you can take it a step further by applying additional filters to the rules, such as defining the vehicle, the color, and speed, etc. You can also do scripting that can be applied to allow logic between the rules, like AND or logic, which makes it very flexible. And then last but not least, the metadata can also be streamed to software that will then aggregate all the metadata, either from a single camera or from multiple cameras. And then it will display it in intuitive widgets on a dashboard.
I haven't seen that. And that's standard, is it?
Correct.
Is this coming from the camera into the VMS, or
yes?
How does that work?
That screenshot there towards the far right is actually called the Bosch Intelligent Insight software. So it's purely a metadata aggregation software package that allows you to do custom dashboards on certain use cases and then display it in those intuitive widgets, either a widget form or in like a bar graph form.
So there is integration there into a video management system?
Yes, I mean, look, that's a web-based, or you can pull that in via URL into third-party VMSs. You can also use other third-party companies such as NetGenic to do a custom dashboard with the metadata.
Okay, interesting. And obviously that's aggregated data as well. It's not just per camera, but you can aggregate that data, right?
Correct, yeah. So the first version of Intelligent Insights allows you to do 64 cameras on one system, and we're expecting a release in the next month or two that will more than double that number.
Well, maybe give us a use case. What would be good to be monitoring the metadata in terms of an intelligence monitoring tool, or is it just more system monitoring and make sure everything's working fine?
Yeah, so if we look at the example of that dashboard, you can see the vehicle and you can see the person below that. So first basic rule can be applied by counting vehicles. And again, you can define the type of vehicle, whether it's a normal car, a truck, a bus, or a bicycle, and then do a counting just on a certain direction. In addition to that, you can do the same with people counting and also just count upright persons. So that's just an example of counting. You can also do occupancy to see the amount of people in an area. You can also do a flow sort of use case that allows you to detect the flow of people as well. Yeah,
and I'd say there's speed as well. So you could do a sort of average speed and whether people are going through an area and they're actually speeding. So from a safety perspective, right? Yes,
and then the image that you can see at the bottom of that dashboard is just a simple JPEG image or a PDF image. And what you do there is you classify the objects. So you position the camera with the geolocation settings, and then the camera is then able to plot the objects that it detects in the field of view, and then it'll define it on that map as an upright person or a truck or a bicycle, etc. Okay. And also show you the trajectory of that object.
Very good.
So ideal for
Does it link? Would
application.
it also link to the next camera? You know, when you're trying to do the mapping, sort of following someone through a shopping centre, for example, mapping those camera numbers, where the system starts to map that object as it moves through multiple camera views.
So that is for a single camera. That use case. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. Fair enough. Yeah. All right, mate.
Okay.
I like that.
Yeah, that's very exciting. And that's also Bosch first that was released towards the end of 2020.
Right.
So continuing with the edge analytics. So this slide just provides an overview on the road towards AI and being more predictive. So starting with on the left, the 3000 to 6000 series. So those models come standard with what we call EVA, or Essential Video Analytics. Then moving on to the 7 and 8000, they come standard with what we call IVA, which is Intelligent Video Analytics. So the difference between EVA and IVA is simply that the IVA models have additional hardware for processing, which makes it more powerful and more accurate. Then another exciting range is called the Intiox. That's towards the middle, which is Bosch's first Android IP cameras that will allow you adding third-party apps to the camera. Then also, in addition to the Intiox, next to that is the OC models, which is also an Android platform, but that comes pre-configured with an AI detector for ITS or vehicle verticals, which provides exceptional accuracy based on the deep neural network-based detector. And then lastly, towards the right is just another example of the intelligent insights that allows the user to make informed decisions and get a complete overview of the scene.
Can I just ask on the Intiox OC, that is built predominantly just for traffic. We mentioned transport before, so highways. We did an interview with a startup out of Melbourne just a few weeks ago who's working on predictive traffic congestion, and they can start to predict traffic congestion just based within 3 hours of congestion occurring. Is that something that that this system is looking at in relation to that? What type of
yes, that's
AI has been
specifically
applied?
for those type of applications, congestion. You can do traffic counts in certain directions, color, car parks, etc.
Right. Okay. And how have you got more on that? Is that's currently available? Any kind of case studies you might be able to raise of where it's been applied?
That was the first phase of that was released recently, and then the second phase of the Intiox or OC is expected in the next month or two.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's relatively new. The other thing that we're waiting for on the Intiox side is the App Store. So the App Store is not officially released in Australia yet, and that is expected to be released in September.
Okay.
Yeah, so look, we can definitely provide more information on that after the session. Yeah.
Well, we are looking at doing a deep dive series on video analytics and AI, and so we might have you back for that.
No worries. That'll be the ideal candidate for such a session.
Nice. And
okay.
What we'll do, just conscious of time, Alan, but we might actually let's maybe close off on this one in terms of the detection capabilities that it has.
Yeah, so this is just a typical perimeter example. So where we've applied two different rules. So the first green defined area can serve as an early warning. And then once the perimeter is breached, a second line crossing rule can be used to verify the alarm. And then just referring back to the filters I mentioned earlier, because we can define the object, in this case as an upright person, we can then filter out all other moving objects to reduce the false alarms.
Nice. No questions on that one. That's been around for a little while though, hasn't it? That's on the standard 8000 series.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I can maybe do one or two more slides. I'm not sure how much time we've got left.
Yeah, well, maybe we'll finish off on, firstly, is there much of a price difference maybe on the existing Starlights versus the new ones?
The X series? No, fortunately not. It's a marginal difference.
Right.
So we expect customers to rather go for the X series.
And the new features are standard as well. They're not having to up the license or anything like that.
No, nothing is licensed on the X series. So everything is on the edge and available on the camera out of the box.
Nice. How are you finding the market overall, particularly say during COVID? Any issues on supply or anything like that? And yeah, maybe we'll touch on that one as well. I mentioned that I had a project with Bosch cameras and didn't seem to be a problem on supply. And yeah, any issues that you've seen in the market?
Yes, look, I guess everybody is struggling. Look, we've done exceptionally well, I must say, not just in terms of supply, but sales. We've had numerous projects, and we've been very lucky up to date to been able to supply everything. But we have resorted in some cases to buy components in the open market, as some of the suppliers are unable to supply.
Yeah.
But that's a worldwide problem. But like I say, fortunately, we've been very lucky to date. We've able to overcome that. That's
around on the chipsets, is it?
Correct. Various components, chipsets, also Wi-Fi modules, etc. So I'm not sure. Some of the further slides I was mentioned that on the X series and also the standard 8000i, it has a Wi-Fi module as well, which can be used for wireless commissioning. So that.
Okay, well, let's skip over to that just quickly, and we'll close off on Wi-Fi commissioning. That sounds pretty cool.
Yeah, so let's just go to that slide quickly.
I always like it when you see video. Where can video be applied? It's basically anywhere now. So I like it when the vendors go, where we can put a camera. It's like we can just put it anywhere now. And I haven't heard of Wi-Fi commissioning, so this is good.
Yeah, so I'll maybe do this slide. So this is just showing a comparison between the traditional way of commissioning by using perhaps a camera tester or someone is being contacted by a control room or remotely instructing a tech on how to position the camera. So with the X series and the built-in Wi-Fi, and it's like I said, it's also available in the standard 8000i. You connect to the camera via an app that can run on a mobile device or a PC, and that is purely used for commissioning purposes. It's also on a separate network, so it's not part of the cable or the fixed network. So
it's a Bluetooth?
It's Wi-Fi.
Okay, Wi-Fi. Okay, but obviously with a limited range then.
Correct, yeah. So in that project assistant app or tool, you then can set the field of view of the camera, which has a function that's called PTRZ. So that is pan, tilt, zoom, and the R is for roll. So that allows you to adjust, pretty much all the positions of the camera to get the desired field of view. And that can all be done remotely or via Wi-Fi. So you only need a cherry pick or scissor lift once, and thereafter the commissioning can be done by a single tech, and then also adjustments can be made just by one person doing. So you
can access it to change the configuration, make some rules on it as well.
Correct.
Okay, cool.
Will be done by Wi-Fi.
And obviously the commissioning consultant can get access to that?
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
And like I said, afterwards you can disable the Wi-Fi, and for customers that would like to permanently disable it, there's also an option to do that if they don't want the Wi-Fi to be available at all. Yeah.
Okay, I actually like that. That would have been handy recently.
That's a game changer in the commissioning side, that's for sure.
All right. Well, look, what we'll do, this is in association with our CCTV Buyer's Guide channel. So that's where we put all of our video systems and analytics news and updates on that particular channel. And otherwise, I think you're in yesterday's newsletter as well, but the link will be in our show notes. But thank you so much for that, Alan. I really like that. Video is really kind of my best area, but we haven't really done a live video camera review. So this was quite good and you did very well. So look, just noting on the time, there's no questions from the audience. So although there looks like a few more have come in for the cybersecurity session now with Rob. So Alan, thank you so much for your time. Allen Hepburn, the Video Systems Product Manager. I'll just take that down and bring you up on screen so you're there. That was Bosch has just launched their new Flexidome IP Starlight 8000i X series camera, and some quite good features there on its HDR and obviously on its light as well. So very good. Thank you very much, Alan.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you to the audience.
Good man. Okay, thanks again. I'll put you backstage.
Thank you.
Okay, very good. And without further ado, let me just clutch over my captions. Virsec is gearing up for rapid growth in the ANZ region. And so with that, let's bring on Rob Nabillo, who is there you are, Regional Sales Director for Australia, New Zealand, just joining the team. Rob, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Very good. Just a slight delay in my video, so I don't know whether it's at your end as well, but maybe introduce us to Virsec, and this is quite new. So they've put a team together and you're going to head up the sales, and it's a application-aware workload protection platform. So yeah, maybe introduce us to your role and how you've kind of, what's your bit about your background. I think that might explain why Virsec have brought you on.
Yeah, sure. So originally from Palo Alto Networks, so I was at Palo Alto for around 4.5 years as regional sales manager, looking after the Queensland market. Wasn't planning on leaving. Got a tap on the shoulder from Virsec, and the technology really jumped out at me. It's very different, very unique. Nothing quite like it on the market. So yeah, it was just a no-brainer. And they asked me to come and lead the Australian business and grow the Australian business out. And I spoke to the CEO in the States, and seeing people who are joining the board, people like John Chambers, who ran Cisco for over 25 years. Jim Routh came on board. He's one of the most well-known CISOs in the industry. So just with the caliber of people who are joining the company, it was just I think it was just the right decision to make.
Fair enough. And they're based in San Jose. How long have they been around?
So the company started in around 2016. So I had some very smart people starting the company, people like Satya Gupta, Ray DeMayo. So these are people whose background were in software and microprocessors and chipsets, etc. So they built this from the ground up. We now have over 50 patents. But they originally started in 2016, as I mentioned. Didn't have a product for sale until 2019. However, onboarded a lot of defense contracts and US government. When GA ended 2019, and then obviously COVID hit, but we're still able to hit the ground running. Grew the business quite rapidly in the US, expanded into India and the Middle East, and now we're here in Australia. So they've hired me to grow the Australia and New Zealand business.
It's always the way. Sometimes the Australian market's sometimes the last one. They always go to Europe after the US. And have you got any early clients here, or are you starting cold?
No, so I started cold. So I was employee number 1, and Ben Burt, who joined me as well from Palo Alto Networks, he's employee number 2. So he's a regional technical director looking after ANZ. So our mission is to grow up the team. We want to build a channel-led business here. So I've already had quite a lot of success in that space. So the partners who we've already onboarded are people like Batum Solutions, who are a First Nations supplier. And they've been very supportive of us, and we're about to onboard the first female Indigenous Virsec system engineer.
Nice.
Through
They're up in
Batum,
Queensland, aren't they?
Up in Queensland, correct.
Yeah. Nice.
Also the likes of, so I chose my partners carefully. So NTT, Telstra, CyberCX, so big national players, very strong security practices. They've all jumped on board fairly early and fairly quickly, and then a few niche partners such as MOQ Digital, based up here in Queensland as well. The guys down in Murdoch Webster in Victoria. So I chose partners who I'd had experience with in the past, who were very technically astute in the security space. These are also people who, before I took the role, I actually spoke to and said, hey, what do you think of this tech? And the general consensus from everyone was, this is game-changing tech. If it does what it says it did on paper, then it was going to be good. So within a short period of time, we've re-onboarded one major customer in Australia. Ben's July is extremely busy. We've got POVs running at least 10 other customers. We've got launch events that we've got in the works. So yeah, it's been very, very, very busy, very quick ramp up in a short amount of time. So, but we do have the support of the channel in Australia, which is good. So
very good. Maybe that's a good segue to tell us what it actually does and the game-changing aspect to it. So workflow, application level protection. Maybe just talk us through the platform.
Yeah,
and it's a SaaS, right? A SaaS model.
No, it's not.
Okay.
So it's a software. So basically, it's the first and only application-aware workload protection platform, and it incorporates system integrity assurance, application control, memory protection in a single solution across the entire workload. So whether that workload's on premise, in the cloud, or in containers, we are protecting the host layer, the memory layer, and the web layer. So there are no other technologies that can do the full stack. Through our patented technology, we've been able to map what an application does. So every application has an intended use, and so all we're doing, so rather than chasing bad, which your conventional tools are doing through signatures and ongoing tuning, etc., we're just enforcing good. So we're extending the zero trust security and automating that process into the workload, and enforcing a positive security model. And so once we've mapped all those processes, files, libraries, scripts, etc., we're able to then say, okay, this is known good, and then we're stopping anything malicious from happening. So, that gives us the abilities to stop the widest range of attacks, both known and unknown, with no signatures or no prior knowledge required.
And I take it that's using an algorithm of a learning algorithm, and this is something that's been done at the network level, but this is now being done at the workflow application level.
Yes and no. So this is a question posed to Ben and I, and what we're doing here at Virsec, we're trying to change people's perception of how security works. So we don't require any tuning, we don't require any ongoing learning. So there's no baseline period of say a month to be able to identify what the workloads are doing. Essentially, through the patented technology, we're able to, as soon as we load that sensor onto the workload, within a matter of seconds, we're able to identify all the processes, all the files, scripts, etc., and we map that instantly. So we create that zero trust model in a matter of seconds. So
is it an agent? Is it an agent that goes out and does that?
Correct. Yes, on the workloads, whether they're on premise, in the cloud, or in containers.
Right. What's the business model? Is it per device workflow? How does that work? Or users?
So it's per server, VM, or container.
Okay. And is it working with anything else? Is it something that and it's reporting process as well?
Yeah, sure.
Does it integrate, or does it sit up on the SOC, or what's it alerting to as well?
Yeah, sure. Look, it integrates really well, and I think the benefit of the product is, we're not an EDR tool, we're not a logging tool where we're logging every single event that comes onto the server itself. We're only stopping an attack, and so the richness of data that we actually provide, we can then send that information off into your own SIEM, or if you have an external SOC, an external SOC. It is quite rich data. We can also send that data as macro protections to your firewall. So if you have Palo Alto firewalls or whatever vendor firewalls in your environment, you can actually send macro protections where they can then create a signature to push that out to the rest of your environment.
And when you say it can stop an attack, what does it actually do? Because I think by the time it's at the application, depends on where it's come from as well, right? So how does it stop?
So look, we don't need any signatures, as I mentioned. We don't care about CVEs. You know, as you're aware, CVEs are coming out every couple of hours now, if not longer. I think with the National Vulnerability Database, there's 2,000 vulnerabilities coming out a week. So, you know, we don't need any of that information. So with the uniqueness of our technology, we actually let the code run for a fraction of a second, see what that's doing. And because we're instrumented into the host layer, the memory layer, and the web layer, we can see if a malicious actor is trying to do something like a remote code execution or a buffer attack, and we just kill their process. So we're actually not affecting the process of the server itself. We're just stopping anything malicious from actually occurring. So, you know, we're mapping what the application does, putting a guardrail up, and ensuring nothing from the outside can affect that process.
And I take it there's a bit of a backup to it as well, so it's protecting the data in that application as well in case it is compromised. So
the way that we map the file, so we map, as I mentioned, you know, libraries, executables, any dependencies of the application itself. We also map all the files, so we can see if, and I'll use the example of SolarWinds when they were, or the recent Colonial attacks. Once they've used something like a remote code execution to get a foothold in the server, most conventional tools couldn't actually see that there was anything malicious in the actual server itself. So they're able to download PowerShell. So once they then try and do things like encrypt the files, we would block that process. Well, we would have actually blocked it higher up in a kill chain during the remote code execution piece. But for whatever reason, if you didn't have that turned on and just had our host layer of protection, because we map what the files are intended to do during the runtime of the application, we stop all these attacks in real time. So it's not an after the fact. It's all happening in runtime, in real time. So we know what the files are doing, and we know that those files shouldn't be encrypted or shouldn't be deleted.
And what's the alert process then? Do you identify what it is? Is there any forensic logs that you can provide?
Yeah, so there's a real richness of data there in terms of, so it's not just providing you with an IP address, it's giving you quite a lot of forensic data. I've been working with some of the local Splunk team locally and speaking with a few of the MSSPs around the richness of data and what they can do with that data. So we're looking at things like process IDs, you know, what the actual attack was, you know, if it was a SQL injection, what was the actual code that they were using. So there's quite a richness of data there. It's not just here's an IP address, here's where it came from. Mm-hmm. We go through quite a lot of context. So
okay, very interesting. And what is the early take up if it's quite unique? I think you've just got to get that awareness out to the market. Is there, you're up against some of the bigger competitors as well?
Yes and no. So our job essentially is more of an education piece. So because people are so, for the last 20 or 30 years from a security perspective, we've always been looking at a probabilistic model where we're continually chasing bad. It's always been around signatures and pattern matching and hashes. Even with the uptake in machine learning and artificial intelligence, there still needs to be some sort of baseline there. So part of my role and part of Ben's role is educating people on that's the old way of doing it. The new way of doing it is enforcing good, creating that zero trust model in runtime in real time. So we do compete a bit with some of your traditional endpoint vendors. We do compete also a little bit with your RASP and your WAF vendors, but from that full stack of security, we find that once we get into the demo, that's when people really understand it and really get it, and you get that aha moment from people. So you can see there are always parts in a meeting where you can see in the people's eyes when they finally get it. Okay, we understand how this works now. So it's pretty straightforward process. It goes from meeting demo into a POV, and then from the POV, goes from there.
I suppose you mentioned that of where do you sort of sit on, say, a quad? Which quadrant are you put in? Are you in the EDR?
Yeah, we don't really have one. So at the moment, working with Gartner and other analysts, we're positioned in that cloud workload protection space. So even though we can work on premise, on physical, and in virtual, that seems to be where the Gartners are looking. In the most recent cloud workload protection analysis that they've done, there's a real focus on memory protection. So if you look at all the recent attacks like SolarWinds, Exchange attacks, they were attacks on memory. So we've got a fairly unique product in that space. No one can do what we do in that space. So yeah, it's hard to really explain who our competitors are. We have a lot of competitors, yet we don't really have any competitors that can do the full stack. I know that sounds lame, but
no. I think that's cybersecurity, isn't it? There's a lot of players out there, a lot of vendors. It's cutting through the noise often, particularly when a new one comes into the market. A lot of discussion. I think you're up against some discussion here in Australia on, sovereignty and backing Australian cybersecurity companies as well. But again, they still have to compete on these tools and be world class alongside that. And again, when you see new vendors coming out of San Jose and Silicon Valley, you've got to at least have a chat, particularly if they're coming in from Palo Alto Networks as well, getting their staff.
No, exactly. So look, it's been a pretty cool ride. If you look at our background, we focus in that critical infrastructure space. So working a lot with defense and the US government and across the utility space. So we're one of very few vendors who don't require a SaaS offering. So all of our software, all of our CMS sits on premise. So if you're looking at defense and a lot of government entities, they like the fact that their data stays on site; it doesn't go anywhere else. Yeah. We can work in air-gapped environments. We can work across SCADA environments. So if I look at where most of our interest is at the moment, it is in government and defence and across the ICS and SCADA space, and then moving into BFSI and the healthcare space. So
wow, that's pretty good. Yeah, I'm just looking at now. You got your protection of SCADA on any platform as well. Can you change the application policy as well? Are you able to change and push out policy, or is it more of a monitoring and protection tool?
Yeah, we don't need to. So we are a protection tool. So we're preventing anything bad happening on your workload. Now, we don't require any source code. Generally, when we have conversations, people assume that we have this heavyweight agent that's going to kill the process, because when vendors have tried to do this memory control flow in the past, they've killed servers or made servers unstable. So what we've been able to achieve is we've been able to, as memory gets loaded from disk into memory, we've been able to map what those memory transitions are. And then so when an attacker is trying to actually do things like a remote code execution or a ROP chain attack or a buffer overflow, we're able to stop their process without affecting your actual application itself. So as I mentioned, just putting a ring fence around what's good and stopping all the bad.
Nice. Well, you certainly look like you've been well versed into Virsec and you know your stuff. So thank you so much for that, Rob.
I appreciate it.
It's otherwise Virsec, virsec.com. Worth having a look, and no doubt we'll hear more from the Virsec team as they take it to, you're up there in Brisbane. COVID being okay and kind to you?
It was until about a week ago. No, it's picking up again. So I was lucky to make it out to Perth a couple of weeks ago, just before they went into lockdown. We've hired Ben based out of Melbourne. I've made a couple of trips down to Canberra. So there's a lot of interest in Canberra. So we'll probably be hiring someone in Canberra. Due to the overwhelming reception from the channel, I'll be bringing on a channel person hopefully very soon. So it's it's spinning a lot of plates at the moment. So the growth has the growth's been a lot faster than we had anticipated. So the hiring is going to happen a hell of a lot faster. So hopefully have another 6 people by the end of the year.
Wow, nice. Well, I think in the release was Cybersecurity Market in ANZ worth around $5 billion. So it's a market worth having a look at. And again, particularly with new technology, and given the state of the market, New South Wales education under a cyber attack at the moment, you've got Kaseya, there's no shortage of activity going on. So certainly it's top news. So good time to be on.
No, exactly.
Beautiful. We're not out of a job. Look, Rob, thank you so much. Let me just bring that up. Rob Nobilo, Regional Sales Director for ANZ with Virsec, a new entry to the Australian New Zealand cybersecurity market and their application-aware workload protection offering. Thank you so much, mate. I'll put you backstage, and we got there eventually, mate. You had a good morning.
Yeah, it was fun.
Cheers, Rob. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Okay, very good. And no chats today. So there's most of Sydney is in lockdown, unfortunately, but that is how it goes here. But otherwise, from the marketplace, our report of the day, and I might just raise that one because it's a bit easier to read. Hang on a second. There we go. So this is from Trend Micro, their latest research. In fact, we just touched on ICS and SCADA. This is a 2020 report on their latest report, but it's a 2020 report on threats affecting ICS endpoints. We've got a good ICS endpoints highlighted here in the Purdue model in their architecture, just on how that is. So if you're interested in the SCADA and ICS cybersecurity realm, this looked like a very good report and worth having a look through. Just highlighting the Purdue model there, and then also a breakdown of the ransomware that's affecting ICS systems in 2020. Ryuk is up there, but also I think Blocker, there it is, and down at 2.1. For those top four being Nefilm, Kanopi, and Lockbit as well. So it's a worth report. It's on the marketplace. Check it out. But the findings of that report was that ICS are increasingly under attack. So that's it from us on our Friday morning episode. We'll be back on Tuesday afternoon for our Tech and Sec Weekly, and we will be releasing a couple of other interviews. I mentioned got the CEO of Kaseya lined up for an interview on Monday, and also one with Secure ID RSA and their business development manager as well. So have a great weekend. If you're in Sydney, enjoy the lockdown. Otherwise, the rest of Australia and our listeners, have a great weekend. Thanks very much.